Welcome to this latest edition of the Ril Dil podcast. I'm your host, Ril Gerald Quinn. On this Thursday, we're recording this podcast normally a couple of days late, but we're here. Hope everybody out there is enjoying their day, enjoying their summer. A lot going on in the world of sports and pop culture. We're going to begin out, somewhat in the world of sports, but this has been a story that's been kind of transcended and kind of captivated the nation, if not the world. WNBA superstar BRITTNEY Griner, of course, one of the great players in WNBA history, one of the great players in women's basketball history, is still being held captive, of course, in Russia. We know the story. And as of right now, the U.S. had a proposal for a trade swap with Russia for Griner, and also Paul Whelan, who's another American who's also been held captive for the last couple of years, in which the swap, of course, was proposed in June. So last month, though the news is just coming out now in the last couple of days. Now, allegedly, the swap was for arms dealer Victor Bout, who has been, of course, been called the Merchant of Death. He's been in captivity for years, for over a decade, and this thing, now allegedly he's the guy that they want to trade for, Griner and Whelan for. It's not official, but that's what that's what reports are saying, that he is the person that they want to that Russia would want in return for the freedom of Griner and Whelan. Listen, folks, this is not as cut and dry of a situation as many of you may think it is. That guy, if Bout is the guy who Russia wants in return for the freedom of Griner and Whelan, this is not just a regular criminal here. We're talking about a arms dealer. We're talking about a guy who funded terrorists. Okay. This is why presidents age during their tenure for decisions like this, because let's say hypothetically you make this trade, this swap. Griner is free, Whelan's free, but then you have this terrorist who is free as well. And let's just say he goes out there and funds some more terrorism that leads to the deaths of Americans, or that leads to the deaths of some Americans per se, or anybody. But let's say, just for argument's sake, some Americans. Then what? Biden is in a no-win situation. He almost has to help. He almost has to bring Griner home because, approval ratings are at a low right now. You want the black vote. You want the LGBTQ plus vote, right? And think about this: worst case scenario, you don't want Donald Trump, who already is we know is going to run for 2024. You don't want him to get in the mix and say, hey, I talked to Putin. Putin's decided to let her go. Boom, boom. So there are a lot of moving pieces here from this standpoint. And again, it is not that simple to simply just say, hey, bring BRITTNEY home. Like, that's just not, we can't go to war over this. And America's not going to go over the war, go to war over this. You can't invade Russia and bring it home. Like, I just don't feel like people realize how complicated that this situation is. And immediately we want to point to, misogyny, racism. We want to point to, we want to point to, not standing up for the LGBTQ plus community. We want to point to a number of things in terms of why BRITTNEY Griner is now home. It's not that simple. It's just not. And, it is a I'm telling you right now, I cannot imagine having to make this decision if I'm president of the United States. Now, considering what I guess, like I said earlier, considering the state where Biden is at from a political standpoint, he's going to make the move to try to do everything to get her home. Period. But it is not a cut and dry situation in terms of this is the best. Like her coming home the best possible outcome if it allows a terrorist to be free. And on top of it, if it sets a precedent for, for other Americans to go overseas and to get kidnapped or to get held hostage and for future swipes. Think about that. So, of course, we want Brittney go. I want Brittney Griner to be free, to be out of prison. She should not be in prison, right? She shouldn't be doing jail time. The punishment does not fit the punishment doesn't fit the crime. But again, think about this. The punishment was done, the crime was done in Russia. If this were the United States, it would be no jail time. What she did in terms of smuggling, the vape cartridges, that was in Russia. Whether it was intentional or unintentional, it was in Russia. They have a different they have a completely different judicial system. It's not America. It's not any other country. It's Russia. So we got to be cognizant of that, and just, you have to look at all the angles here when it comes to this particular story. Of course, you want her home, but again, it's going to be it is a very complex situation, and moving forward. Now, again, the scary thing to me is, if you're the scary part about this situation, there's so many ways you can go, but the scary part to me is that somehow Putin and Trump use this to both their advantages, and getting Donald Trump back in the office, back in the White House. That's the scary thing, because I can definitely see those two conspiring and to do this, something like that. I 1,000% can see that. Okay. Right now, the United States really doesn't have any leverage on Russia to bring Griner home or Whalen home. They have no leverage. The ball is in Russia's court. This is going to be dictated. If she's free, it's going to be because Russia decided to make this decision. And Russia could care less in terms of they're not being pressured. They're not going to be pushed around or bullied into freeing Griner. That's just not going to happen. And if I'm Russia, if I'm thinking like Putin thinks, or appears to, based on stuff that you read or based on how he's moved, there's no rush to let her to free her. There's really why I'm in a rush. What for? What? Well, I don't have any. She could stay in, she could be in jail for another year, 2 years, whatever. There's no rush. I'll wait till, after midterms, wait up until the 2024 election. And again, I can see Trump and Putin conspiring to use this against Joe Biden and the Democrat. Like this thing has so many layers to it. Again, we all want Griner to come home, and to be freed, and Whalen as well. But it's a situation that there are a lot of things, a lot of moving pieces. Hopefully, and I don't know. It's one of those situations where what is the best outcome? I don't know if there is a best outcome. There's no clean outcome with this situation, I should say. There's no outcome that's gonna make you have this situation where you can just button it up and everything is nice and neat. That's just not. No, it's gonna be messy regardless of what happens. The situation is gonna be messy. So, just obviously wishing the best for Griner, and I could again, and her friends, her family, friends, who absolutely had won, who absolutely would absolutely want, despite letting, despite the possible outcome where a terrorist is free. And, if you're somebody, if you're related to Brittney Griner, if you're a close friend, of course you want it all. That goes without saying. Her significant, her spouse, her wife, yeah, of course she wants her own. But this thing is just way more complicated than that. And again, the United States is doing, I feel like, everything the United States can do, to be, if I'm being fair about it. I mean, they've offered, if they've offered to free a guy who funds terrorism, I don't know what more can you do outside of going to war, which is not going to happen, which wouldn't help out anybody. That would be that's worst case scenario. Like that's just not, and that's not going to happen. So again, the story that just continues to dominate the NBA headlines. It came out earlier this week, over the weekend, that with the falling with Phoenix and Miami kind of in the background, and kind of on the outskirts of the Kevin Durant sweepstakes, as far as trading, as far as being the teams that could possibly land Kevin Durant. We see a new team emerge that has the assets, that has the picks, and that, of course, is the Boston Celtics. Apparently, Boston and the Nets discussed a deal in which Boston would move Jaylen Brown, Derek White, some picks, and another rotation player for Kevin Durant. The Nets turned that deal down. Because they also wanted Marcus Smart in that deal as well. So Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Marcus Smart, 3 unprotected and some, I'm sure, some multiple first round picks, and possibly even another rotation player. So here's the thing. The Boston Celtics are coming off a season where they were at 2 games. They were up 2 games to 1 in the finals. They were 2 games away from being NBA champions, right? You improved the team over the course of the summer, brought in Brogdon. You have a young core that's only getting better. Brogdon and Gallinari for some depth purposes. You have just about everybody coming back that actually mattered in terms of you making a run for a championship. You are in a position of stability. You have a very good coach. You have a well-run organization. You don't have to make this move. Again, if I were Boston, I would not make this move. I just wouldn't do it. I'm not going to make it. I put it to you this way: I wouldn't make the move on the Nets. The Nets wouldn't dictate the terms of this move. I would dictate the terms of this move. So, would I trade Jaylen Brown, Derek White, and say 4 unprotected first round picks for Kevin Durant? Probably, yeah. That leaves me with I still have Smart, I still have Tatum, I will have Kevin Durant coming in. I also have Brogdon, Horford. Yeah, that team is the team. That team would be the team to beat. I am not giving up Marcus Smart. I'm not going to allow Brooklyn to dictate the terms of this deal, because Brooklyn is in the position to where they have to move Kevin Durant, even though he's under contract. They don't want an unhappy Kevin Durant coming back in October and saying, hey, you know what? Just go play basketball. We'll dare you to sit out. We'll dare you to sit out. No, they don't want that. They don't want that. And if they said they wouldn't mind that, then so what? So be it. I will call it bluff. Brooklyn can win a championship as currently constructed. They don't need Kevin Durant. If they were to make the move, right, let's say they give up Derek White, Smart, Jaylen Brown, and all those picks. You're talking about, okay, having a Kevin Durant who who will be 34 years old and who has missed a ton of games in the last couple of years, right? Talking about having a Malcolm Brogdon who has missed a ton of games in the last few years. Okay. Robert Williams. So they already have some injury issues as is. Even currently constructed, even without Durant. They already have some guys that are kind of that, Brogdon, Williams, kind of has some Horford's getting older. So if I take away Marcus Smart, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, all the picks, that gives you flexibility to make other trades, other moves. And then another rotation player, then no. That cuts into your depth, and that leaves you into where you are basically an injury away from not being in a title contender. That puts more pressure on Kevin Durant, a 34-year-old Kevin Durant. See, when Golden State got rid of all their depth, right? When they signed Kevin Durant, he wasn't traded for, but they got rid of a lot of their depth. So Barbosa, a couple other guys that were not on the team because they had to sign because they signed Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant was, this is 5 years ago. Kevin Durant's 30, 28, 29 years old. He could carry that weight, and you still have Steph, Draymond, and Clay in their primes, right? A team that team had won a championship and had been to the finals twice. If you're Boston, you just gotta ask, is it worth it? Considering what you are building, you have a stable organization. You have a team that's only going to get better. And again, you don't have to make this move. See, Miami, they have to go after Durant. They can't stand Pat. Phoenix can't stand Pat. They have to go after Kevin Durant. They have to take a risk in giving up picks and possibly, if he were eligible, right, DeAndre Ayton and things of that nature. They have to go all out because currently constructed, those teams are just not good enough to win the championship. Phoenix is not good enough currently constructed to win the championship. And Phoenix will continue to go after if Durant isn't traded into the season, and by the trade deadline next year, they will be in play for Kevin Durant as well. I don't think that will be the case because I think Durant will be moved. I think Durant will be on a new team by then. But if he's not, hypothetically speaking, Phoenix will still be in play for Durant. So where the NBA is at right now, and again, I mentioned this on a podcast with Robert Sapp. I think it was on our last podcast for the NBA. I said I will never again get caught up in the super team, shiny car aspect of how you run a franchise as a fan. I would never get caught up in the team that does that. If a team goes for a made-up super team or a super team that's just manufactured versus stability versus continuity. And I'm sticking to that. Boston right now has stability. Boston right now has continuity. They don't need Kevin Durant. They don't. And again, if I'm going to make the move to get Kevin Durant, I'm doing it on my terms. I remember when I used to play fantasy football, and we used to do trades. And every trade I would make, just about, I made a couple bad ones. But the majority of trades I made were trades to not only help my team, but trades to hurt your organization because I was trying to win. I made one bad trade my whole fantasy football career. One bad one that I still regret. That probably cost me a championship the first year one of the first years I started playing fantasy football as an adult. After that, no. I nailed all my trades from fantasy football. Nailed them all. Because it wasn't just about me improving my team. I'm trying to cripple your team as well. And that's how Boston has to think. Like, we're in the same division. We're in the same conference. I'm not trying, Boston has to not give a shit about the Nets. Like you are in a position of desperation. Your franchise is in shambles right now. Why would I? You have no leverage. You're not getting the better. I'm not giving up the house and farm for Kevin Durant. No, especially and listen, Durant. We know Durant's an all-time great, especially with everything the baggage that comes with Durant. Durant, despite his greatness, despite the fact that he's still probably a top 5 player, there is some baggage that comes with Durant. Is the fact that he just basically quit on a franchise with 4 years left on his contract, or off a supermax contract. The fact that he left a perfect franchise, the best franchise in the sport right now in Golden State. You have to take all those things in consideration if you're the Boston Celtics. Can't just get allured by the talent that is insane. That's ridiculous talent. We know how talented Kevin Durant is, one of the most talented players of all, a top 5 talent of all time. Not a top 5 player of all time, but one maybe they're a top 5, top 10 talent of all time without question. Not a top 10 player. But you know what Kevin Durant is all about and what Kevin Durant can do. And the fit would be perfect. Yeah. He'll fit with Jason Tatum. He'll fit with Kevin Durant, can fit with anybody because that's his game. His game is tailor made to fit with any style of basketball or any offense, any type of offense or any players. It doesn't matter. You can play off the ball. You can, put the ball on the floor, isolate. You can do it all. We understand that. We get it. But you're the Boston Celtics. You are building something. You took a major step last year in getting to the NBA Finals. Jaylen Brown can get better. Jason Tatum can get better, right? They're young players. They're Grant Williamses, Derek Whites. Those guys are going to get better. They should be like you're building something here. So I wouldn't do the deal. I definitely would not do it on the Nets terms. And I would actually wait out. Remember, no one in the league right now is going gaga over trying to trade for Kevin Durant. The Nets do not have a lot of suitors. Teams don't have the money, don't have the assets. Teams are not in a position to, and most of them, the majority of teams have eliminated themselves from the standpoint as they know that Kevin Durant doesn't want to play for them. So that's eliminated about half the league as it is. The Nets have limited, when I mean limited, on count on the half a hand, how many options the Nets have right now in terms of moving Kevin Durant. So if I'm Boston, I'll just wait it out. I'll go into the season as one of the top 2 favorites in the East along with Milwaukee, one of the top favorites in the whole NBA as far as winning the championship. Right now, I think Boston is the favorite to win the championship in terms of the betting odds. So they're in a position of power, not the Nets. This podcast is Deep Dive. Is brought to you by All Calculated Measures. I recently got some merchandise from Adrian McDonald. Looking forward to wearing it, showing it to you. He has a bunch of new merchandise out on his website. It is at I can pull it up real quick. I will post it. Matter of fact, I will post it on my on the description at the end of the podcast. I will post it once the podcast is out. But this deep dive in quarterbacking is brought to you by All Calculated Measures. We're going to look at 2 fascinating, interesting quarterbacks who have a lot in common. To be honest with you, even though they have completely different playing styles, have more in common than what you think. Lamar Jackson and Jimmy Garoppolo. Of course, Lamar Jackson remains remains a Baltimore Raven, but he has not got that mega contract extension that normally guys of his ilk would have signed by now. You've seen Kyler Murray, we've seen Josh Allen, we've seen a number of quarterbacks in the last couple of years, especially in that 2018 class, signed their super max extensions or close to max extensions. Lamar Jackson has not. Um, Now, a couple things. Jackson is represented by his mother himself. He's not with an agency, right? So keep that in mind. Um, and the thought is, what, you know, do you give Lamar Jackson uh, the max deal as far as making him the highest paid quarterback of all time, which they're going to have to do. Like the guy, he is an MVP. Remember, for all the stuff you can say about his throwing and or lack thereof, as far as him right now being a championship quarterback from a pocket, you're winning games with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, in his first 4 years of his career, has done nothing but win games. He is 37-12 as a starter. That's a 755 winning percentage. He has an MVP. Now, again, 1-3 in the playoffs. But let me keep this in mind for a guy who has rooted for a team that hasn't had a quarterback, a franchise level quarterback, since like Joe Theismann. Okay, it's been 40 years since my team has had a quarterback. Of how hard it is to find quarterbacks that win games. Go ask Detroit Lions. You can go ask Chicago Bears. Go ask a number of teams. Go ask the New York Jets. Okay, how hard it is to find a championship level quarterback or quarterback, a playoff caliber quarterback. So Baltimore is going to have no choice but to pay Lamar Jackson, period. And when you look at him, the question is, are they going to push him to develop into being a pocket quarterback, a quarterback that can do damage in the pocket? Not so much that lives in the pocket, but that can do damage in the pocket. To me, Jackson's failures in the postseason and his failures as a passing quarterback, as a quarterback in the pocket, are not emblematic of him not wanting to change. It's emblematic of the structure of that offense or the lack of weapons on the outside. So that's the question. Will they push him to go to that next level? Because I think Lamar Jackson can do damage out the pocket. Matter of fact, I think one of the most underreported stories last year in regards to Lamar Jackson, I know he missed a number of games at the end of the season due to with the injury, was the fact that I thought he took a step forward from throwing in the pocket. To be honest with you, I just don't think he has the weapons on the outside, and I don't think the offense has challenged him to take that next step as a passer. Listen, he's never going to be a classic drop back passer. He's never going to be that classic guy. I mean, Brady, Manning, we know some of these classic drop back passers who don't move in the pocket. That's never going to be him. But he can be a Steve Young type. People forget about Steve Young. Before Steve Young became an MVP, I think Steve Young won, 2 MVPs, or at least one. I think yes, Steve Young won 2 MVPs and had one of the all-time great Super Bowl performances of 6 touchdowns against San Diego. Before he did all that, Steve Young used to just terrorize and just drive his receivers, Jerry Rice in particular, crazy, because he was he would look to run and not go through all his progressions early on in his career. That was a problem. That was a major problem with Steve Young. People forget about that, but he did have those issues early on. They coached him up, and he developed into a great pocket passer as age kicked in, and as he took more hits in regards to running, and the rest is history. I don't see why Lamar Jackson, again, this is about the coaching, cannot develop into that type of player. And he has way more physical talent than Steve Young ever will have physically. So, to me, it's more about, with Lamar Jackson, it's more about the structure. It's more about are the Ravens going to challenge him to be that type of player? As far as Jimmy Garoppolo goes, of course, the worst kept secret came out um, earlier this week, and basically an announcement by Kyle Shanahan saying, "Hey, Trey Lance is our guy. You know, we're moving on from Jimmy. Like we've known that for the past year or so. So we knew that was going to be the case. Similar to Lamar Jackson, Jimmy Garoppolo has done nothing. You can say what you want about him, criticize him, call him inconsistent. You know, he has been injury prone. That's to me, that's the biggest knock against Garoppolo, is he has had a hard time staying on the field. But when he's been on the field, he's done nothing but win. He's 31-14 as a 33-14 as a starter. Okay. 4-2 in playoff games. Look at Kyle Shanahan's record with him versus without him. It's not even comparable. Like Kyle Shanahan with him, the team's going to be in the playoffs. They're going to be contending for conference championships. Without him, the team has been mediocre, to say the least. That's despite having a great offensive line, great defensive line, and a bunch of talent around, and a bunch of talent, individual talent, as the 49ers do have. But, I understand them wanting to move on. Them wanting to move on and see what they get, see what they have in Trey Lance. But there should be a number. I'm looking at how many teams there should be a number of teams who should be looking. What is the Giants, Saints, Texans, Lions, Steelers, Falcons that should be looking at Jimmy Garoppolo. To be honest with you, I think Garoppolo can come in and be a perfect stopgap quarterback. Now, the thing is, though, you have two quarterbacks you have Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, who are going to be the top two quarterbacks taken in next year's draft, injuries withstanding, in 2023. A lot of teams don't want to risk having Jimmy G on their team to where they might win too many games, and there are going to be some teams that are tanking this year, folks. They won't admit to it, but there are going to be a number of teams in the NFL. The bad teams are going to be horrible this year. You're going to see you're going to see some 2-15, some 3-4. You're going to be a bunch of 2-15, a bunch of 3-14, a bunch of 4-13 teams. There'll be a number of teams within that range, between 4-13 and 2-15, to tank to get those to get a shot at one of those two quarterbacks. There'll be at least 5 or 6 quarterbacks that are projected to go in the first round, but Young and Stroud are at the top of the list. These two guys, again, have done nothing but win football games. But this is where the NFL is at right now at the quarterback position. The stakes, there are levels to the quarterbacking to where teams absolutely know that it's just not enough to have a winning quarterback player, a winner at quarterback. A guy who just wins games is not enough. You have to have a guy who we are winning games because of that guy. We have to have a guy who we feel like can make other players better. There's a thought around the league that Garoppolo and Lamar Jackson don't make the players around them better. And again, that list is not that long. Patrick Mahomes, Brady, Rodgers. We can stop right there. Now, Joe Burrow could be headed there. Justin Herbert could be headed there. But the list of quarterbacks that make their teams better is not very long. It's very short. But that's where we're at right now with the quarterback position. It's no longer a situation where, oh, this guy wins games, so yeah, we want him on our team. No. And that's what Dallas is going to finding out the hard way with Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott's a guy, he'll win you some games in the regular season, but he's not going to elevate you to that next level. He's getting paid like a guy that's going to elevate you. That's more, you want to call it market value, sure. But that's the category that these two guys are in right now. Now, obviously, there's more upside considering age, and he hasn't had as many injuries yet because he hasn't been in the league as long. Lamar Jackson, of course, has by far the bigger upside. Jimmy Garoppolo is like 29, 30 years old. But you could do, I'll say, you can do a hell of a lot worse on your team than to have one of these two guys playing for your football team. Would I take either one of these guys on my team? Absolutely. And there are about at least 10 teams that would and should take either one of these guys on their team, because that's going to immediately help you get to the playoffs. Lamar Jackson will put you in the playoffs. So we're concluding. I finished up The Wire, the entire series early this morning. And this course is going to be our concluding our series of Wire at 20 reflections. Now, season 5, there was a lot of criticism of season 5. The worst season, by far the worst season of The Wire and what have you. The story was ridiculous, blah, 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 so on and so on. I'll tell you right now, season 5 of The Wire is probably better than about 85% of seasons in probably television history. Okay. Season 5 was phenomenal. And it was phenomenal because number one, let's take this into account. They only got 10 episodes. Okay. They only got 10 episodes. It should have been 12 to 13. So Simon is already he's not dealing with a full, came into that season, basically handicapped in terms of the amount of time he had to tell a story. And again, The Wire is always a complex story. It's not, you can't rush the type of storytelling which The Wire is trying to convey. And Simon got rushed by HBO, clearly, to wrap up the season, to wrap up the series. The performances from Dominic West and Tristan Rogers were Emmy level great. Remember, Dominic West coming out season 4, they didn't need him. He was at a MVP acting level in that season as Jimmy McNulty. By far his best season as an actor on that series in the out of the 5 seasons. And you look at the premise of think about this. It starts off episode 1. You hear the famous, Buck Moreland quote at the end of that, the epilogue: "The bigger the lie, the more they believe." You're telling me, think about where we are at right now as a society with fake news and the internet and the social media in terms of how much bullshit that people actually believe. It is, again, the show was just ahead of its time. And I heard this, and just deep diving a lot of Wire stuff with it being the 20th anniversary. When you are ahead of your time, it's hard for people to just appreciate what they are actually witnessing during that particular time, if that makes sense. And I just think that people just, first of all, I think, like I said, season 5 got compared to the other 4 seasons. Was it as good as the other 4 seasons? No. Was it the worst? Was it the weakest out of the other 4 seasons? Yes, but it wasn't because of storyline. It was because of the fact that they got rushed into ending the show. That's why it was the weakest out of all the seasons. They only got 10 episodes, and right comparisons to seasons 1 and 4 getting 13, and seasons 2 and 3 getting 12. That's why it was the weakest seasons. They did not get enough time to tell the entire story. You want to say 10, because it's an hour, because the last episode was an hour and 30 minutes. You want to say 10 and a half episodes? Sure. But as far as performances, as far as where we stand in 2022 with the news cycle and what they were trying to convey in season 5, I mean, it goes hand in hand. Like I said, like I said, this season, that season took place in 2008. It might as well have been 2022. Back the way they were telling stories and the way that the news is right now, as we currently stand in 2022. Like I said, it was so far. That's the thing about it. It was so far ahead of its time that I guess people just couldn't believe that news could be that it was just that the idea of a cop lying for a fake serial killer out of stat, to try to have money poured into his criminal investigation, which is just was just too unrealistic. But to be honest with you, in today's society, no, it's not too unrealistic. And again, the bigger point was, and this is where The Wire is just such a smart show. It wasn't so much it being believable where what McNulty could do it, what McNulty could McNulty do that or get away with that. The bigger point was what led them, McNulty and Freeman, to make that decision. All the promises that gotten broken, the systems that were broken, Carcetti and his old ordeal, taking not allowing policemen taking away from the police budget because of the failings of the school system and and what have you in terms of the previous administration. So everything, all those connected, all those things that were connected, all those systems that fell apart that led to those decisions of desperation uh, were more about what David Simon was trying to convey than just the actual believability of a cop faking murders and creating a serial killer. But as far as the news stuff goes, I mean, listen, the news stuff is like that. Yeah, a reporter making up his own shit like that. What, that doesn't happen? Like, come on. Like I said, I think the season 5 to me has aged perfectly because of where we stand in 2022. And again, you would never ever convince me that this is not the greatest show of all time. So that's going to conclude our Wire reflections. 20th anniversary of The Wire. Again, I encourage anybody who hasn't seen it or to do another rewatch of it. Each time you find out, you learn something new or different that comes out after every rewatch. And that was certainly the case in this time. I can't count how many times I rewatched it, but you learn something different every time you rewatch the show. Biggest disappointment and who won the week. So this is history on the Ril Dil podcast, because for the first time you have a player, an athlete, or you have someone who won the week and was also the biggest disappointment at the same time in the same week. Kyler Murray, of course, signed a contract, a 5-year extension for $230 million, $160 million in total guarantees. He'll get, of course, $105 million basically immediately. That's guaranteed. The $160 million is second all time in total guarantees, of course, behind Deshaun Watson. His average salary, $46 million a year, is second all time. It's second all time as well. And so when you sign that type of contract extension, yes, you are winning in life. Why is he the biggest disappointment? Of course, it came out during the weekend that there was a clause in his contract that required him to study 4 hours outside the building. There have been question marks about how hard Kyler Murray has worked. the maturity, leadership, all those things. We heard all those things during the offseason, and they showed themselves in terms of how he handled any type of criticism when we were back in January, when he seemed to seemingly just was doing shit like taking all the Arizona stuff off his social media, and and seemingly just did not accept the criticism that came with him not playing well in a playoff game, which is one of the worst playoff debuts of a quarterback in recent memory. I mean, he was awful in that game, but that was his first playoff game. But he was awful, period. And he did not play well down the stretch of the season. So here's the thing, right? Let me read you two excerpts. First one was out the New York Times last year. I'm not one of those guys that's going to sit there and kill myself watching film. I don't sit there for 24 hours and break down this team and that team and watch every game because in my head, I see so much. And basically said he has cognitive abilities that allow him to, that other, players, quarterbacks don't have. So, he doesn't have to watch as much film as most guys. Okay. Now let's fast forward to today. I'm talking today because I feel it's necessary with what's going on as far as regarding me and the things that are being said about me. To think that I can everything I can do everything that I've accomplished in my career and not be a student of the game and not have the passion and not take this serious is disrespectful and almost a joke. Murray said, to me, I'm flattered. I'm honestly flattered that y'all think at my size I can go out there and not prepare for the game and not take it serious. It's disrespectful. I feel like to my peers, to all the great athletes and players that are in this league, the game's too hard. So here's the thing. No one ever said that he did not prepare or didn't take the game serious. I think his own team was basically saying that he didn't prepare or take the game serious enough. So they're not saying that you're not preparing. No one's saying that you're not even taking the game serious. What they are in essence, what your team is saying, and what's been the whispers around the league is you don't over prepare or you don't prepare hard enough. And anybody who knows anything about football understands this. At the quarterback position, you have to be the hardest worker, the smartest, and the hardest. You have to be the hardest worker on your team if you want to be a high-level quarterback in this league. You want to be a franchise guy. You want to have any chance at being a great player and being consistent and being a championship caliber quarterback, any chance, you have to be the hardest worker. And that shouldn't, your work ethic should never even be in question. So the fact that your own team, your own franchise, does not believe in your work ethic to a point to where they feel like they have to put it in your clause in your contract speaks to where Kyler Murray is at in his career. Now, Kyler Murray has gotten off to a relatively fast start in his career. He's been offensive rookie of the year. He's led his team to the playoffs. He's put up excellent numbers. But again, to reach a certain level, to have sustained excellence over the course of time, you got to put in, like, you have to be you have to be one of these guys that lives and dies with game film and preparation. It's just all there is to it. Eventually, the league will catch up with you, and eventually, not saying he'll ever be out the league, he just will not live up to his full potential. And listen, we've seen guys in other sports, like Allen Iverson. Was Allen Iverson the hardest worker in the offseason in terms of lifting weights and training and tedious, meticulous about his preparation? No. Did he get by basically on sheer talent? Yes. And Allen Iverson, I recently heard Allen Iverson said that was the difference between me and Kobe. Kobe, I'm not Kobe. Kobe was that guy. I was in the club. Kobe was in the gym. He said that. That came out of his mouth. Okay. So there are guys that can get by on sheer talent. What'll just happen is you'll see a lot of those guys either be injury prone or just won't live up to their, or you'll be saying that when their career is over, you know what, that guy could actually, as great as he was, he could have been better. Here's the difference between that and say the NFL. At the NFL, the quarterback position, the level the quarterback position is being played right now, there's no cheating. You can't. There's no cheating in the game per se. You're not getting by on just pure talent. It's just not going to happen at the quarterback position. You're going to have to study as much as it's going to be even more important. It's probably going to be more important your mental and physical preparation than even all your physical attributes and abilities. Probably more so. So if I'm an Arizona Cardinal fan, I would be extremely concerned, to say the least, about the future of this franchise and what type of player Kyler Murray will be moving forward and how far Kyler Murray can go. Getting to the playoffs is just not enough anymore in the NFL because, I mean, the way it's set up now, it's not a big deal to get to the playoffs. It's just not. With the extra teams, the extra rounds, the extra teams, it's not the extra games. It's not, you get to the playoffs, huh? Cute. That's cute. You almost have to have a good year. To me, you almost need to get to the playoffs and win a game for it to be a successful year if you have a guy who is a perceived franchise type quarterback like Kyler Murray is. Again, I've never heard of a quarterback, a franchise quarterback, a guy who's going to be a Hall of Fame all-time great, being considered, having to be pushed to work harder. If that's not a red flag, I don't know what is. Now, there have been questions that should Arizona had even put this clause in his contract. And I would say no, they shouldn't have put this clause in his contract. That this should have been dealt with internally. This should have been dealt with internally. But the problem is you don't have a strong, that team has had a losing culture for the most part. They've had a couple of years. They had a couple of good years with Kurt Warner and Larry Fitzgerald, made to the Super Bowl. I give you that. But for the most part, this has been a losing franchise with a losing culture. When you have the guy whose talent is driving the culture, that could be a problem because that talent might not equate with character. We saw that in Brooklyn this year with Irving and Durant. The talent did not equal up to the character, and their culture fell apart. You still have to have a situation where the franchise culture is being driven by the franchise. That's ownership, general manager, coach, then quarterback, and then the quarterback filters to the rest of the team. Right now, Kyler Murray is driving that culture because he is by far their best player, and he is the quarterback of the team. And he's had some success, some early on success. So, no, I don't think. First off, 4 hours is nothing. Like 4 hours outside, I guarantee you. I'm telling you, I'm not even just looking at the top guys. The majority of NFL quarterbacks are doing are even after they're done prepping, even when they leave the facilities, are doing stuff when they're at home that it far exceeds more than 4 hours. 4 hours is nothing, especially for an upcoming game. They're doing anyway 20 to 25 hours, at least, if not more, in terms of just like that is that position. It is the most it is the most important position in all of sports right now. The quarterback position, the complexities, offense is the hardest position to play. And keep in mind, you have defensive coordinators who don't sleep, who are coming up with schemes week in, season in, year out to try to stop you or to try to contain you as a quarterback. So like it's like baseball with they are going to adjust, find your weaknesses. You have a weakness, they're going to find it. Period. It's like a hitter and pitcher in baseball. Adjust, counter adjust, adjust, counter adjust. That is how the quarterback position is. And again, you will get exposed if you don't work hard enough. It will get exposed. Trust me. So again, if I were an Arizona fan, you know, I'll be extremely concerned moving forward. Now, do you give them the money? Yes, you have to give them the money because there are just not that many quarterbacks out there who are franchise caliber quarterbacks, and his talent does dictate that he is a franchise caliber quarterback. And right now, he's checked off all the boxes from a playing standpoint that will tell you that he's a franchise quarterback. But the one box that he has not checked off that remains to be seen, of course, is his leadership. So, again, congratulations to Kyler Murray making Ril Dil podcast history, winning the week, and also the most disappointing, the biggest disappointment. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Ril Dil podcast. I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their day. I will see you next time. So long.